As someone who's already inducted into some very impressive Hall of Fames, including the National Inventors Hall of Fame and the Association of Equipment Manufacturers Hall of Fame, how does it feel to be inducted in the Prowler Hall of Fame?
This is my home. So whatever comes of it is, I like the idea.
You're famous throughout the world, but finally some recognition here, right?
Yeah, I tell you, because, I left Hydra-Mac and the tractor business, I don't think people realize what all I've been into in town. So most of them think I just another person that doesn't get involved in, other people.
You're not as famous as you probably should be because you're just a nice, unassuming guy. I grew up, in church with you. I knew you. That's Doug Steiger. I know he's involved in the tractor company. And come to find out when I got this technology job and did a little research that you were the big guy. And I think if you were a little more boisterous, smiled a little less, or a little less kind, maybe people would understand that you're a little more famous than you are. In the winter of 1957-58, yourself, your brother Maurice, and your father John built the first Steiger tractor in your barn on your farm just west of St. Hilaire. Could you tell us a little bit about how that came about?
What had happened, we had good years and we grew pretty fast as a farm. And then all of a sudden there was like probably 3-4 years of ground out, couldn't get the crops in. We were running out of cash in our operation, but we had big enough machinery for harvesting like silage or ditching and all that. And some of the neighbors wanted to hire us to do that. So both my brother and I could go out and do called custom work and earn some money if we could get a machine big enough so Dad could, plow probably 3,000 acres. Then we went to the banker. You could buy a Wagner back then for about $25,000. And we said we thought we could build one for 10. And the banker said, well, I'll borrow you the money for the building yourself. Sort of unusual for a banker back in those days to hang his neck out that far, to have us spend $10,000 for something we did, could have been a piece of junk when it got done. I really have a belief that there was a bigger power influence on what is supposed to happen with the tractor business than was human. A man by the name of Earl Christensen was at Crookston at the winter shows. He came out there and his dad had a big dealership and he said, you make them out of new parts and I'll sell them. And of course we were innocent enough back then, when you really think of it, that was a big risk. But we did, we went ahead. And he sold, I was with him, and he sold where you'd think it was impossible. So that was supposed to happen, I think. There was others that built their own tractors that they didn't get anywhere. Some of them tried. They built probably 20, 30, and never made it.
So not only did you start a tractor company, but you had an effect on the whole farming industry, at least in our area of the country and probably beyond, because you allowed farmers to grow with the bigger equipment.
In most cases where they bought a big tractor, those farms got bigger. And I think it created where we are today, where the farms are huge.
Well, and one thing that strikes me is at 91 years old, you're still somebody that remembers names, and I think when you can remember people's names and call them by name, that goes a long way.
There was the Clark Equipment. In fact, they're the ones that bought Bobcat out in Findlay. They made the Clark loaders. And but they also made OEM parts. We bought our axles from them. And the guy that represented it was John Shank. There's some names that I do remember. And then he had a salesman that used to work for Minneapolis Moline, and he was in the powertrain division. His last name was Swenson, but he was the one that called on us, and he took a liking to me, and he brought books out for me and stuff. So I got my engineering degree, not in school, but I got it for building tractors. And I kept a copy, and I got 2 of those. They're only about that thick, but it gives me how to figure the ratios. In some cases, just charts, I can just pick it out. So I could figure out what gear ratio to put in the tractor to travel at every, at 2.5 miles an hour and 3.5 miles an hour. And so I could figure that stuff out. Before that, I had to do it the long way, and it showed me how to do it.
But that background made it understandable to you, or somebody like me, if I picked that book up, I wouldn't have a clue what that meant. But that's part of the story too that I think is so unbelievable. In this day and age, you could pick up used tractor parts at almost any junkyard and put them together in a tractor if you had the knowledge. You didn't have that. You were using construction equipment and iron ore equipment because four-wheel drive tractors weren't around long enough that there weren't any junk parts.
They didn't make it. The small one we used regular tractor parts, but then the bigger ones, you couldn't buy them any place.
So it must have been
they were a half-breed, like a truck and a big semi.
Well, and just a scavenger hunt, watching American Pickers or something like that, but trying to go across all over the country, knowing exactly kind of in your mind what you need, but trying to find that part. And then with the engineering and that too, not having the internet. And you touched on it before too, that, by some divine intervention, when you needed somebody to help or the right person to show up, it seemed like, whether it was Earl Christensen or the guy that helped with the engineering and the ratios, it just seemed like west of St. Hilaire, they just kind of fell in your lap somehow. It's amazing.
I got 4 daughters. Vicki is the youngest, Angela was the next, and it's Pam, and then Regina is the oldest.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about your wife, Kay? She's pretty successful in her own right. Can you tell us a few things about her?
Well, she was one of the top salesmen for the whole Lutheran Brotherhood organization, number 4 in the whole United States.
Definition of a power couple. And I tell people this too. You had the most amazing lawn that I've ever seen in my life out on 59. Just.
But when we got married, we were told that it wasn't a marriage, it was a merger.
Well, and I've got one more question to ask you, and I've always meant to ask you this with the kids, but you're too busy answering their questions and signing autographs and stuff. So I'm really interested in your answer on this one. As a teacher, I always like to ask people who have been successful in their life, what are some things that you feel kids need to learn these days, both as academics, but also as characteristics to help them be successful in their lives and future careers like you have been in yours?
Well, that's a hard question to answer because of the change from when I was involved. And it might be my imagination, but I believe that the young people today, although you read it's different, but I think just because of the news and everything, most of them are more advanced than we were back in those days. I think, of course, one of the big things, if you really want to build a big company or something, you need a personality so that you can win other people real quick. And I didn't have that to begin with. Probably still don't. When I'm this age, it's a lot easier for me to say things and stuff that I wouldn't when I was younger. Like I kid the clerks and stuff like at L&M and stuff. I wouldn't do that years ago.
So just some of those communication skills, just pushing yourself, trying to make yourself comfortable, and realizing it's not going to come all at once, but when you put yourself out there a little bit, you'll gain those skills, you'll get more comfortable. And I bet I've said it 1,000 times now that you and Magina have been coming in, year after year. I always say, if Doug Steiger and his brother and his dad can build a tractor in their barn over a winter, just think what you can do if you try, and take a risk. So that's something that I think is just so inspirational, the fact that you guys took a risk, you believed in yourself. I'm sure there's some people that thought you were crazy, and you accomplished it. And not only accomplished that, but look at where it went from there.